Welcome to Recap King. In this video, we will explain Joy Ride. This movie tells the story of three young people on a road trip from Colorado to New Jersey who talks to a trucker on their CB radio. They must escape when he turns out to be a psychopathic killer. Will they survive the killer? Let's find out in Joy Ride. Joy Ride begins by showing a young man named Louis who is on the phone with Venna. Louis plans to travel from California to Colorado to pick up his childhood friend, as well as the girl he likes. Louis even bought a car to impress Venna. So excited to drive a new car, Louis couldn't control himself until a traffic policeman pulled his car over because he was traveling at high speed. After a while of driving, Louis was forced to stop in Salt Lake City on his way after he learned that his older brother, Fuller, had been arrested by the police. Although annoyed that Fuller was often in and out of jail for the crimes he committed, Louis still released his brother and finally Fuller joined him on a trip to Colorado. When they pulled up to a gas station, Fuller installed a CB radio in Louis's car and the two began to listen to the trucker's chatter. Fuller then persuaded Louis to prank a truck driver named Rusty Nail and asked him to pretend to be a woman named Candy Cane. At first, Fuller and Louis were just playing pranks on Rusty Nail to relieve boredom while driving long distances. Still, because the truck driver seemed to be seduced by Candy Cane, Fuller became even more interested in pranking him. They then arranged a meeting with Rusty Nail at a motel, where Louis and Fuller would spend the night. When Fuller was about to make a reservation, he was standing in line behind an old man who was making a complaint to the motel clerk in an emotional way. Because of this, Fuller came to know the old man's room number. After finally being able to check in, Fuller then returned to the car and asked Louis to seduce Rusty Nail and tell the truck driver that Candy Cane would be at the Lone Star Motel, to be precise in room number 17, even though room number 17 was the old man's room who got mad at the motel clerk. Fuller then made a reservation in room number 18, the room next door. The brothers couldn't help but laugh when they heard Rusty Nail instantly devoured their joke. Shortly thereafter, Fuller peeked through the window and saw a man who had just arrived at the motel, then headed to room number 17. Fuller assumed that the man was Rusty Nail and asked Louis to eavesdrop on the wall. Louis and Fuller heard a brief debate and scuffle in room 17, after which there was only an eerie silence. Feeling worried, Louis then contacted the reception office and asked about the situation in room number 17. The receptionist replied that there was no problem in room number 17 because the room was now vacant. After getting clarity, the two then decided to sleep. The following day, Louis was startled by a policeman who introduced himself as Sheriff Ritter, in front of his motel room. The sheriff said they found a man on the highway in critical condition, and after conducting an investigation, police were tipped off that the man had rented room number 17 at the Lone Star Motel last night. Because Louis admitted that they were involved, Sheriff Ritter then took them to the hospital and showed the old man's condition, who is now in a coma in the hospital because his lower jaw was torn. After that, the police questioned the two of them and let them go. Louis and Fuller looked shocked to see the old man's condition, then continued their journey and decided not to bully Rusty Nail again, or even anyone. However, Rusty Nail is heard again on CB radio and looking for Candy Cane. Louis then reveals that he is Candy Cane. Rusty Nail then demands an apology, but Fuller curses him instead. Shortly after, Rusty Nail called Louis and Fuller on CB radio and said they needed to fix the taillights, implying that he was following behind them. Knowing that the psychopathic truck driver was following them, Louis immediately stepped on the gas and drove at high speed. But their fuel was running out, so the two decided to stop by the nearest gas station. Fuller quickly refueled the car, while Louis rushed into the store, trying to reach Sheriff Ritter. Fuller looked panicked when he saw a large truck coming and stopping at the gas station. He panicked even more when the truck driver got out of the car carrying a baseball bat. When the driver got in, Louis panicked, and Sheriff Ritter couldn't be reached either. When finished, Louis and Fuller immediately stepped on the gas from there in a hurry. The truck driver carrying the bat then chased after them, forcing Louis to drive his car off the highway. The driver continued to chase them until they were stuck in a dead end. Too scared to run away in the middle of nowhere, Louis and Fuller chose to stay in the car and locked all the doors and windows. The driver of the big truck then got off and walked over to their car. It turns out the truck driver was a kind stranger, trying to return Louis' credit card, which he had left on the gas station checkout counter. After returning Louis' credit card, the driver left. However, just as he was about to turn around, the real Rusty Nail then appeared in his big truck and crashed into the ice cube truss. Without thinking, Louis immediately broke through the wooden roadblocks to avoid the truck driver's pursuit. However, Louis and Fuller were again cornered, and now Rusty Nail managed to squeeze and slowly crashed Louis's car into a tree. Fearing that the driver would kill them, Fuller hysterically apologized for the prank he had done. After hearing their apologies, Rusty Nail left and stated that his actions were just a joke back. Lewis and Fuller resumed their journey after Lewis' car was repaired. Fuller then dumped the CB radio on their way to Colorado. Feeling safe, Lewis and Fuller then picked up Venna at the University of Colorado. Venna then introduced the brothers to a close friend named Charlotte. After picking up Venna, Lewis and Fuller continued their journey and decided to spend the night at a motel. The three of them were involved in an incident that almost led to a fight with several men at a bar near the motel. But luckily, Fuller was able to quell the altercation so no one was hurt. After returning to the motel, Lewis fell asleep from exhaustion. Not yet sleepy and wanting to unwind, Fuller then went to Venna's room and chatted with her while drinking. On the other hand, Lewis finally woke up after hearing the phone ringing repeatedly in his room. When Lewis picked up the phone, how shocked he was to find out that it was Rusty Nail who called him at the motel. Rusty Nail then told Lewis that he watched the brothers and knew that Venna had joined them. Lewis immediately panicked and rushed to Venna's room. He then told Fuller and Venna about Rusty Nail, who knew their whereabouts. At that moment, the three immediately left the motel and went as far as possible. However, Rusty Nail can still reach them by leaving instructions on the road sign. After seeing a road sign that said "Look," they stopped and took the initiative to look at the car's trunk. It turned out that in the trunk of their car, Rusty Nail had put the CB radio that Fuller had thrown away a few days ago. Rusty Nail then radioed them again and revealed that the truck driver had kidnapped Venna's friend while playing Charlotte's voice to the three of them. Rusty Nail threatens to kill Charlotte if they go to the police. The following day, Rusty Nail asked Lewis and Fuller to get completely naked and enter a restaurant full of customers. This is to make them feel how it feels to be humiliated in front of a crowd. After that, he directed the three towards a cornfield located in a remote area. Rusty Nail then asked the three of them to get out of the car and walk down the cornfield. But unexpectedly, he immediately drove his big truck towards the three of them at high speed. Suddenly they ran helter-skelter to save themselves from the crazy truck driver who tried to kill them. Because they were too focused on running away from each other, the three finally separated. Lewis and Fuller finally reunite and decide to find Venna. However, when they return to the car, flames begin to burn the car. Lewis reaches the CB radio where Rusty Nail says he has kidnapped Venna and asks the brothers to go to the Medford Motel and into room 17. Because Lewis's car was burned out, Fuller then took the initiative to steal a car and they immediately drove to Medford. On the other hand, Rusty Nail had taken Venna to a room at the Medford Motel and kept her there. Rusty Nail then sets a trap that will kill Venna if the bedroom door is opened. He even called the police and framed Lewis and Fuller for Venna's death. Lewis and Fuller finally arrived at the Medford Motel and headed for room number 17. But it turned out to be just a trick. Rusty Nail wanted to get back at their pranks. Fuller assumed that Rusty Nail must be in room 18, then checked through the back window. But Rusty Nail had predicted that, and immediately attacked Fuller. Luckily, Fuller still managed to yell at Lewis and tell him that Venna was stuck in front of the door with the shotgun pointed at her. So Lewis didn't open the front door. At the same time, the police arrived and began to search the motel. They found the motel clerk who had been killed and opened the bedroom doors one by one. Meanwhile, Lewis tries to save Fuller, trapped in a fence from Rusty Nail, who tries to run into him. Lewis must race against time because he still has to save Venna, who will be killed as soon as the police open the door to room number 18. Lewis finally manages to save Fuller and Venna in time and everyone flees when a large truck crashes into the motel. When police investigated Rusty Nail's truck, they saw the body in the driver's seat and Charlotte in the back seat, alive. Venna was very relieved that her friend was still alive, although they both still looked very shocked by the tense incident that had just happened. They immediately received medical treatment in the ambulance. Police later revealed the identity of the truck driver's body to Lewis and Fuller, who turned out to be the kind-hearted truck driver who returned Lewis' credit card earlier. The film ends by showing Lewis, Fuller and Venna hearing Rusty Nail's voice over the CB radio in the ambulance, indicating that the crazy truck driver is still alive and free to roam.